Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Intuition Revolution. And today I am welcoming Lauren Winzar, who's a decluttering and organizing coach. Welcome, Lauren.
Thanks, Ange. Hi.
Can you tell us, I know it's in the title, but can you tell us a little bit what your business is about?
Yeah, so my business is my name, how you introduced me. I'm Lauren Winzar, decluttering and organising coach. So it's most people sort of come to me thinking along the lines of professional organizer, and that is a little bit of what I do. But when I started working in this industry, I didn't want to be going into people's houses and making them pretty or, Pinterest perfect or color coordinated and rainbow. I love all of that stuff. I really do. But what I kind of took the approach of, if you teach a girl to fish, she can eat forever, I wanted to teach people how to change their habits and their strategies and their systems in their home and help them make decisions themselves in their decluttering process for lifelong changes rather than just a quick fix to make it look pretty today. So a good system, regardless of who puts it together, will last, weeks, months, years. But I wanted my clients to understand how they came to make decisions that got them where they are and how to make those decisions differently so that they can come out of it themselves with support rather than trying to do it for them. Does that make sense?
It does, but I had no idea that that was a professional organizer that they did it for you. So that's
Yeah.
fascinating to hear.
So, I mean, I do have lots of professional organizer friends and colleagues, and everyone takes a different approach. And there are certainly professional organizers who have a more hands-on or more hands-off approach depending on
Okay.
themselves. But I wanted to be very clear, not just with my clients and potential clients, but with myself, that my role is not to do it for you. My role is to help you to learn and to figure out your way, the way that makes sense to you, not the way that I want to do things, but the way that makes sense to you.
That is brilliant. And you know what? I had a taste of that when I signed up for your freebie before Christmas, which is absolutely brilliant. I recommend it to anyone. I had
Thank you.
never thought of planning Christmas. I don't know. After that, I had a bit of a facepalm moment. I'm like, how could I not have thought about it? And yet,
Yeah.
by asking the right questions in your PDF and taking us through these video series, which are live streams, which are absolutely wonderful, it actually enabled me, and we've talked about this, to
Mm.
make a big difference in my household over Christmas, because I have lots of people who have sensory issues, who are autistic, and
Mm-hmm.
who are traumatized. And I wondered why Christmas was traumatic, but now I
Right.
get. And it's not just that. I understand
Mm.
why, but I know how to put it right, which is even better.
Yeah. It makes such a difference, those just asking those questions. So you did my free series that was planning for a stress-free Christmas.
Yeah.
And that's something that, it took me a few years to figure out for myself. But then when I noticed that I was doing the same sort of routine of planning and then my follow through every year, I realized that there might be something there that other people might benefit from. And
Oh,
apparently I was right. I'm
absolutely.
so glad.
This should be your
As you,
signature thing, honestly. It will,
oh,
although
keep
you
that in
can only
mind.
kind of promote it at Christmas, I suppose, but or just to get people thinking. You could, whenever there's an occasion, planning your Valentine,
Yeah.
planning your
Well,
Easter,
it's
planning.
kind of it, it's sort of a mini tester of what that kind of structure can do.
Yes.
So, yes, we had it in that context of around Christmas time because that is an experience that many people can relate to, the stress that comes or that can and often does come with Christmas, and how we actually want it to be are two separate things. But you can apply a similar process to your wardrobe, to your meal plans, to your everyday, just the structure
And in
of,
your
and
business, I'm
in your
thinking
business, exactly.
to your
Yeah.
launch, to your
Yeah. And it can be
organizing
as
your
big or as
papers,
small. You can do
everything.
it for your whole life or just for this hour,
Yeah.
the same ideas, the same questions, more or less, are what we need to be asking. And, for those of you who don't know, it's usually just a, what do we really want here? And how can we make more of that? Sometimes it means eliminating some of the things that we don't want to make room for what we do want. And that's the decluttering part. That's, it's not always physical stuff. It's sometimes
Oh, yeah.
ideas, expectations, obligations, people,
Beliefs, emotions,
beliefs. Yeah, absolutely. And this is
emotions.
what I
Yeah.
love about it. It's, for me, the idea of decluttering and organizing is all encompassing. It can apply to any aspect of our lives. And
And
that's pretty special to
I'm going
me.
to ask a bit of a naughty question, but do you
Oh,
find that
please.
there's some, a very small percentage of people that just can't get organized?
Oh,
That
I
you like,
like that question. Oh, I love that. No,
that you've not
so
managed to kind of like, you want to shake them because you can't get through? I'm just curious.
I have found people that have been harder,
Yeah.
but I think that's what that means is that we haven't found a method that works for them. So I personally don't believe in naturally organized. I can't imagine that, back in cave person times, there's little wifey cave woman sitting there reorganizing her bone collection into size and color. Like, it just, that's that's not what happened. It is not an essential part of life to have things systemized, but it's a tool we use to make the the masses of things more palatable for us. So I know that I'm not naturally organized. I'm really not. I had to learn methods that make sense to me. I had to unlearn expectations and the right way of doing things to fit with myself and what makes sense in my head and in my home and with my family. You mentioned, you have children on the spectrum. Both of my children are on the autistic spectrum. They're considered high functioning autistic
Yep.
spectrum disorder. And, you know, as most parents find not too long after they have children, it's not everything you expect. You can't, no one has the perfect child. No one is the perfect parent. And so you have to let go of some of those expectations and just start going with what works for you. And I find the same is true with organizing styles. There are so many books and
Mm.
programs and gurus out there, and they all work for some people. It's just like a diet. And there's so many diets and they all work for some people. My drive is trying to find the one that works for you, the one that works for each
Okay.
of my
So part of your
clients.
process is actually to help
Mm,
people find something that works for them. I love
yeah.
it because so
Mm,
many people just sell their solution. And then
yeah.
you feel like a failure as a client if you
Mm,
can't fit into the guru's, whatever.
yeah. Yeah. And I love reading all of the different ideas, and I have my own ideas, of course, but I've tried many of them, and I tried them especially when I had young children and I was, a young mum staying at home and just trying to balance the world in my head and in my home. And some things just didn't sit. And I felt like such an idiot. I just felt really dumb for not being able to do the simple thing like keep my house under control. And I wasn't. It just wasn't a system that made sense to me. And I had expectations that were unnecessarily high and they weren't
Oh, I
helping
can
me.
relate to that. I can
I
relate to that.
I would be surprised to hear any woman or any mother more specifically that doesn't think that at some point she had overly high expectations. Like,
Yeah.
it comes with the territory, unfortunately.
Mm.
But yeah, seeing that there were so many different ways. And over the years, I picked and chose the bits that did sit right with me and that worked and that stuck, and the habits that helped build to, my house is not perfect now, and I don't expect it ever will be. It has its moments, but we still live here. you know,
Mm.
we still wear clothes, we still sleep in our bed, we still eat. My daughter is messy. She has crafts and she likes cooking, and my son is a teenager and he has all the things that come with being a teenager. Actually, he's not quite, he's almost a teenager, so goodness help us when we're in a couple more years.
I I have
But
um I have the best advice for moms of teenagers, but
oh,
only if you
please.
ask me.
Yes,
Never
please go
take
for it.
anything personally. Never take
Oh,
anything. That's the only thing that will save you. Yeah, that's
that's
fine.
good advice. That is good advice. Oh, yeah. Hmm.
Okay, so sorry, I
I'm just letting that
interrupted
sit with
your
me for a moment. Don't take it personally.
ever. Don't
Yeah.
just that's fine.
Yeah. Just let it go. Yeah.
I'm
It's a
saying
good
this, I
idea.
suppose, because that's what I did and it worked for me.
Mm.
So I'm not saying it would work for everyone, but at the
But
same
it's worth a
time,
try.
no,
Yeah.
but the biggest job of teenagers is to
Mm.
oppose their parents so they find their own way. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not about you, it's about them finding their own way and
Yep.
seeing what works for them, what doesn't. But it's such a
Yep.
shock when you get there because you've had complying little children. Oh, for most part, I didn't. I know exactly when you have
Yep.
neuroatypical children, it's different. But
Mm.
for people
Mm.
who have compliant kids, it's such a
Yeah.
shock that from one day to another, almost, they start challenging their parents. They're not used to that.
Mm. Mm.
So, yeah.
Oh, what a road ahead. But
It's
yeah,
fun.
so what I
Yeah,
mean
go
is
ahead.
that there isn't a one size fits all. And you
Yeah.
know that. You know that with business, you know that with parenting. Anyone listening knows that there's no such thing as one size fits all. It just doesn't. It can't. We're all too different. We have so many different things going on. We were raised differently. And I see a lot of clients that, a very common thing they say to me is, my mum has a really, really clean and tidy house. Like her house is so spotless. And she comes over and she tells me what I should be doing, or in some way they feel judged or like they've
Yeah.
let their mother down. And I mean, that's a can of worms in itself. The mother-daughter relationship is one that, I mean, you and I could do a massive podcast just on that, but that's not what we're here about today.
My grandmother was super house proud. My
Yeah.
mum is house proud. My sister is house proud.
Yeah. And
And
so
I'm
when
glad
you're
I don't live in the
surrounded,
same country as them.
and I've heard that before too from others. And when you're surrounded by that, especially when you're raised with that, that
Yeah.
it's so, like, it looks so easy to them. And it looks like you're doing something wrong when you're not doing things the way they are. If only I could, just fold the clothes as they come off the line the way my mum does.
Oh, I
Or
can't do that still.
I don't do that.
No,
I
no.
I hate
Mm.
folding. I hate folding so much. And I agree, like that would mean that I have
Especially
folded the
fitted
clothes. But
sheets. Oh, fitted
yeah,
sheets. You know, they're the
yeah,
worst. Anyway, yeah, no, so I get it. I get it.
yeah.
What I heard as well in what you were
Mm.
saying is that the caveman didn't have that problem also because they didn't have much stuff, whereas we
Oh
have
God,
tons
of
of it.
course. Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, nomadic people,
which
even
one do
today,
you
like
think
there are
should?
people who choose a nomadic life,
Yeah,
even, in modern Western society now.
yeah.
And one of the calling cards for that is a very minimalist life. And, that we say minimalist, and a lot of people sort of recall because it's, it can be seen as a dirty word, and people have different ideas of what minimalism is too.
Mm,
And I don't necessarily push minimalism. My house is far from minimalistic. It's significantly closer than it was maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago, definitely 10 years ago.
mm,
But the key there, like the reason people are drawn to minimalism is the less stuff you have, the less stuff you have to look after.
yeah, there's a
So,
truth in that, isn't there?
mm.
So, what led you into it, into the work that you do?
So, I
If
mean,
you're
I've
happy to
always
share.
loved, yeah, no,
Yeah,
absolutely. So I've always loved things being sort of organized and structured. I was, even in like primary school, I liked things sort of color coded. I liked to plan my calendar. Into high school and uni, I had, matching study notes that were color coded with my calendar, and like everything matched. But a lot of that was a bit of a procrastination strategy. It didn't necessarily make me a better student, but it looked pretty. And, I loved everything having a place. I loved reorganizing my room and, all of that kind of stuff. I liked things to be well organized. The decluttering part was the real key. And that didn't come into play until 6 or 7 years ago now. My mum got very sick and we had to send her back to Brisbane, so interstate from where we live here, to be closer to our extended family. And I was left on relatively short notice to empty out her 3-bedroom house. And that 3-bedroom house was full. It was not messy. It was clean. She was very house proud, but she had so much stuff. Now, I could talk for a very long time about the stuff and the things that kind of blew my mind that she was holding on to, but books were a big thing for mum. So that was the biggest moment for me, was noticing. I mean, I knew she loved books. She always had books, abundance of books in our house forever, as far back as I can remember. But there was one bookshelf that was bowing, like deeply bowing with the weight it was carrying from those books. And if that's not a metaphor for too much clutter, I don't know what is. Like, it was literally about to break underneath the weight of its load. And that went for most of the house. Like, there was so many areas that were just at almost breaking point because of how much she was holding on to. And I'll try and cut my story a little bit short because I know we've got a lot to go through, but I basically took 2 weeks working 12 hours a day to process everything in that house. My husband took that time off work to look after our 2 young children. I packed up everything that she considered essential, that she must keep. And that was the equivalent of the storage unit. So the storage unit we got for her to move her stuff in was the same size as when I moved my family of 4, like our whole home. That was her essentials, must keep, can't live without. And that was a bit much for me. And like, I hadn't looked into minimalism or anything. It hit me that was a lot for one person to consider essential. Like, sometimes you might play that, not really a game, but you have that sort of mental puzzle of, if there were an emergency, what would I grab? Like, my mum just didn't have that concept, like the idea of what could I grab. No, I have more time, so I can take more stuff, so I'm going to fill this thing. And even after all of her essentials were gone, we had a 2-day garage sale where I essentially opened the doors and said, come in, take what you can. We donated, I think, at least 5 carloads to our local charities, plus a trailer load of furniture, plus, goodness, there was so much left that house. And after that, when all of that was gone and we handed the keys over and that house was behind us and all of mum's stuff had gone back into state with her, we built a 3-by-3 meter shed in our backyard to house the excess stuff that we couldn't fit in our house, of stuff that I wanted to keep of hers. And that just didn't sit right with me. I was like, that's a weird thing to do. And I kind of had this itch. I had like this bug that I had to keep processing. Like, when I looked around my house, I was like, oh my God, there is so much stuff here. There is so much, I can't handle it. Like, that needs to be tidied up. And it was a little bit neurotic, but there was just this pull for me that I needed to get rid of some more stuff. And I sort of worked my way slowly, like while my baby daughter was napping, I'd work my way around the house, one little area at a time, just chip away. And eventually I got through the whole house and the shed. So only what I absolutely wanted, what I loved, and what really made me happy stayed. And eventually I kind of ran out of things to declutter. And I still had this bug. Like, but now it wasn't an annoyance. It was just this, almost like an addiction. I knew how relieving and uplifting it felt to be free of this stuff. And I heard my friends being annoyed by having too much. Like, they'd say, there's just so much shit here. There's just so, like, I'm always tidying up and the kids are always leaving a mess, and just like, there was so much weight on their shoulders. And so I offered to help. I said, look, I honestly love doing this. Let me come and work with you. Just, if I'm bugging you, tell me to go away. And I worked a little bit with one friend in particular who said, people would actually pay you for this. And I was like, shh, nah, I'm just doing it for fun. I couldn't possibly. And then she referred a friend to me. She said, look, she actually wants this help. So do that. So we gave it a go and it worked out really nicely. And I kind of snowballed from there. I just started talking about it and
How long ago was
clients
that?
kept coming in. So I'm not 100% sure when that first client was. I want to say 3 or 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really start doing this as a business properly. Like I didn't start my Facebook page, I think, until I want to say July of 2019. So I'm still only in my second year of this as my proper business. Until then, so
I
between
kind of
those.
have to challenge you on the fact that having a Facebook page is like the official.
No, I know.
I
for
know what
me,
you
that
mean,
was.
yeah. Well, I mean, I
Mm,
suppose everybody has a different milestone.
mhm.
For me, it's having your first paid client. So
Yeah. So my first paid client was probably a year or so before that.
okay, yeah,
But yeah, at that stage, it was still a hobby for me. It was something I was going to do in my free time because, mums have so much free time, right? But it was something I was doing in addition to my paid job, my real job, my grown-up job.
okay. And do you still have a grown-up job, or is this your grown-up job
This is my
now?
grown-up job. This is my
Woo!
everything. Yeah.
You've graduated. Well
I
done.
have, yes.
I love it. I love it. Um, yeah. So we're coming now to the intuitive part of things, which is more
Mhm.
in my world, although it's in everybody's world and people don't often recognize it.
Yeah.
Um, do you consider yourself intuitive first?
So I do now. It has taken me a long time to accept that and even longer to admit it openly. But it is something that I do consider for myself now. I am intuitive, yes.
Oh, and now
Mm.
I want to ask you another question. Why did you resist it? What did you took so long to admit it?
So
Like it's a sin?
yeah, this is something I'm still unpacking a little bit, but I did resist it for most of my life. Um, I don't know. I always saw the more spiritual, intuitive side of life as something that other people did.
I
There
can
were
relate to
people in
that.
my Yeah, there
Yeah.
were people in my life that were really into that kind of thing, and they just weren't my people. In fact,
Yeah.
a lot of them weren't actually very nice people, and I didn't
I can
want
relate
to
to
be
that
part of
too.
that. Yeah. And I started to open up a bit more to the idea when my daughter, who is now 9, when she was maybe 2 or 3, I started to notice. I mean, I noticed earlier, but this is when I started to make the link with me. I noticed that some of her empathy, like she is very empathetic, and I would go as far as saying she is an empath. I noticed that her response to the people around her and her effect on people around her was very, very real and very, very strong and powerful. And I noticed her struggling with it. She was hurting and she couldn't understand why she was in so much pain when the people around her were upset. Even if she didn't know they were upset, she felt it. And I was trying to explain to her, because I could see what was going on. And I was trying to explain it to her in a way that made sense for her little toddler mind. And keep in mind, so she is also, as we discussed, she's autistic. So I needed it to be very, very logical and literal, but also child friendly. And what I
Whoa, nice
came
one.
up with,
Nice
right?
challenge.
So what I came up with was, I said, honey, okay, this is a big secret, sweetheart. I said, you have a superpower. And my like 2 or 3-year-old daughter looks at me like, seriously, mum? Like, do you expect me to believe that? The eye roll, like the full-on sass that you would expect of a 16-year-old came out of this toddler. And I looked at her and I said, no, seriously, honey, you have a superpower. And a lot of people don't understand this. And a lot of people might try and make you feel bad for thinking about, for believing this, but you do. You have the power to feel other people's emotions. And sometimes that means that you feel when they're sad, but it also means that you get to feel when they're happy. The flip side of that is that you also get to help them with how you feel. If you're upset, other people feel it and they don't know why. And if you're happy, other people feel it and they don't know why. So that might be really hard. And she started to understand and believe me. And she said, but Mum, I don't want to. And she's crying and she, like, you can see the pain coming through her. And I said, if you understand it and you believe it, then you can start to change. And, you know, it was quite a long and lengthy discussion, but I told her, you know, there was a bit of tension in the household. Everyone was kind of in a bad mood. Like the energy was drawn down. And that often happens when she gets upset. Whether she pulls it
Oh,
from somebody else or she herself is having a bad day, the whole house, the mood drops. Like it's like a great big cloud comes over. It's so strong.
gosh.
And after we discussed this kind of thing a few times and she started to feel it a bit more and kind of find her power in it, keep in mind, this is still like 3, 4, you
Yeah.
know, as we're getting to this stage. And then there was a day that we had like this dark cloud happening. And I said to her, I took her aside and I said, sweetie, I'm trying really hard here. I want everyone to feel happy and I'm trying to use my superpower to help other people feel happy. But this one's too big for me and I need your help. So can you, with me, just be happy? We're just going to put some big smiles on and we're going to try our best to feel as happy, to really feel happy and just see. I said, we'll just try it for half an hour. And if it doesn't work, we can stop. Just try with me. And I swear to you, it was less than a minute. That whole mood in the house changed. As soon as she decided, yeah, I can do that, I can change my mind and I can feel happy now, the whole house brightened up.
Wow.
And it was because I noticed this pain in her. I noticed the reflection of her mood around us and her absorbing the moods of others that I started to realize that I did that too. Now, I don't think that I do it to the same degree that she can. I don't know if that's because I muffled it for so long or if hers is just significantly stronger. But I noticed it in her and I recognized it as familiar. And so I
Mm.
started to accept that as a part of myself that wasn't weird or overly emotional or whingy or whiny or any of the negative things that are put on
People.
us about being
Yep.
strongly emotional women. I started to accept it as this is just part of who I am. And it was actually really beautiful to see in her. So why couldn't it be a beautiful part of me too? And that sort of switched for me and made me look into that more intuitive side of myself.
Do you know what? I have the very similar story. Yeah. My
Mm.
children taught me everything I needed to know about
Mm-hmm.
intuition.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's
From the
amazing,
moment
isn't it?
go. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And yeah, I've asked you to come with a powerful story of how intuition helped you in your business, because I think we all have stories outside of business, but
Mm-hmm.
we don't share enough the ones in business, maybe because it's not something people do yet.
Yeah.
Hopefully, this podcast will change everything.
Hopefully, yeah. So I I have many in business, and I hadn't really considered it like I was using my intuition for my business. But again, the more I learn, the more I realize that I've been doing it.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I had a couple of ideas, but I think because you pulled me up on the Facebook comment, I'm going to go with this one.
Okay.
When I decided that this needed to be I needed to give it a real go. I needed it to be a business. Um, I had several opportunities. Like I was at a fork in the road in my career. I had different places I could go. I had some opportunities come up and they just didn't sit right with me. Every time something came up, I felt myself sort of sinking back into a corner and trying to make myself smaller. I was like, it didn't sit right. There was nothing wrong with any of these opportunities. Some of them were fantastic. They just didn't feel right. But whenever I thought about my decluttering little hobby thing that I was doing, I felt big and full and light and happy. Like it just felt good. And so I decided that I needed to give it a good go. And when I made that decision, I thought, okay, so the things you do when you think you're starting a new business, the things you think are important, right? I, ordered some business cards and I fluffed around with some agreement contract type things for clients and my rules. I toyed with the idea of a uniform, that kind of like the bits that feel important but are actually not anything to do with how successful your business is. And I set up a Facebook page. I was like, how am I going to get the word out to people who aren't my immediate circle? I will set up a Facebook page and do some advertising and stuff. So I set up my Facebook page because it was the quickest way that I knew for going to a real business, right? And there's a bit when you first set up your Facebook page where you can invite your friends. And I was going through my list of every single friend I have on Facebook, including like people from high school, family that I see, once every few years at, family event type things, people who aren't in my inner circle but are connected. And I was kind of picking out the ones that I thought would be really supportive or maybe interested or maybe had contacts that might be interested. And then I pressed a button and the notice popped up that I had sent my invitation to everyone. And and I went, oh shit. Oh shit. And then I stopped for a moment and I was like, okay, so I could undo that. I could just delete the whole page. And like all these options are going through my head. And then I went, actually, that felt really good. That felt really, really good. So I left it. And when it first happened, I was like, it was an accident, but we'll call it a happy accident. But in hindsight, there was that moment there. I could have fixed that accident. I could have stopped it. I could have deleted. I could have done anything to fix that accident and nobody would have known. But my gut, for lack of a better word, my gut said, no, this is fine and this is good. And just go with it.
I love it.
And I loved it because it instantly, I was like, this is what I'm doing now. There's no going back. And that felt really good. It wasn't like well, shit, now I'm stuck. It was like, yes, this is real. This is actually happening and this is what I want to do. And from that moment, I kind of just gave myself permission to talk about it, to be proud of it. Like, this is actually what I'm doing now. This is my business. This is who I am. And this is what I'm offering. And it wasn't this little thing that I'm doing on the side. It wasn't something that, I might mention if somebody says something about decluttering. It was, I ran into a friend's husband that I hadn't seen in years at the supermarket, and he asked what I was doing. I was like, well, funny you should ask. I've just started my business and I'm doing that. You couldn't shut me up from that point. And it was so cool.
I am curious, actually. I want to know, did you really click on the old one or did it just happen and you don't know how it happened?
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay. I'll leave it hanging
because it was honestly, it was a split second, so I don't know.
I see.
And there's no way to know. Like, presumably you can't have that happen unless you click the all button, but there it is.
Yeah. No, I suppose I'm asking this because I know how energy and the universe can interfere with electronics. And I don't know if you've experienced that.
I have.
I am going to dedicate a full episode to that because it's so much fun. But it used to frustrate me to no end because, for example, sometimes And it happens occasionally, less and less, because I'm more aligned to
Mm.
my whole life. But
Yeah.
there's times when I just couldn't send an email. No matter how much I clicked on the button to send it, it wouldn't go. And I was like,
Wow.
okay, I'm not meant to send it. And then I read it again and said, now I understand. Like a day
Interesting.
or two later, there's
Yeah.
been, my phone has been calling people on its own, and there's nothing wrong with it. And so all these
Wow.
things, and this is normal. I want
Yeah.
people to understand and hear this is
Yeah.
actually quite normal.
Mm.
But it will only become normal if we talk about it and we understand how it
Mm.
works.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, even though my tagline is that I teach people how to use intuition without having to meditate, you wear
Mm.
crystals and give up on coffee or wine.
Thank goodness. Oh my
Electronics
goodness. Yeah.
all contain crystals, don't they?
Yeah.
Easy, easy for spirit to interfere with it.
Mm.
But it could be something else. I don't know. But I have such a big track record about that I can't not mention
Yeah.
it. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No. Awesome.
So I'd love to know, where can people find you?
So I suppose the easiest place to find me is to do a bit of stalking and find me on Facebook. So
Yeah,
if you search, my name is spelt a little bit strangely. Winzar is Winzar. So if you look for Lauren Winzar, I pretty much come up. There's not that many of us. So my decluttering and organising
good.
coach on Facebook
Yeah,
is the best place to find me, and I'm sure we can share a link for that.
I
You
will
can watch
definitely.
little videos of me, and past trainings and stuff are often on there as well. That's a good way to get an idea of what I'm about and what I teach. And if you're interested in talking to me, I'm always, a quick message away. I'm also on Instagram and YouTube, but Facebook's the main hangout, and that's where most of the stuff sort of collates itself.
You do have, I know this is going to be published probably by the end of the summer, but
Mm.
in Australia anyway, for us, it's going to be early spring.
Yeah.
Um, or for me. But you also started a new YouTube series, which I think is going to be
Yeah.
really
And
fun.
you are one of my amazing guests, and thank you again for being part of that. So this was a series that mostly came about, just I noticed as I was helping people declutter and organize, they were starting to again sort of open up. Decluttering gives you so much more room, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. And they started to find other aspects of their life that they were now ready to work on or to investigate more. And I'd find they'd ask me questions, or I'd know a little bit about a topic because, I have a client that also does that thing or whatever. But that's not my speciality. So I'd say, you know what, I know just the girl for you.
And
And
that's
so
what you
this
called your
series was,
series. I
yeah,
love
my
the
series is
title.
called I Know Just the Girl. And it's a collection of amazing and inspiring women that I have had the amazing pleasure to work with, or to learn with over the past couple of years, sharing their expertise and a little bit how we cross over, how so many things can follow the same process as decluttering, and how decluttering can open you up to that sort of thing. But also, all of these women have a similar approach to how they teach, in that none of them believe this is the one thing that you need to do and you must
Ah,
do it this way and then everything will be
mm,
fine. All of these women come to it with a very down to earth, let's just try a little bit at a time, baby steps, see what works for you. You know, the client is the goal here, not here's a way to make everyone cookie cutter, one size fits all, yada, yada, yada. There's your way is what we're
mm.
after. And so I've been loving recording and sharing these. And at the time that we're recording this now, so we're early to mid January now, and we've got 3 alive and the rest are waiting. And it's exciting. I'm so happy to share all these wonderful women, including yourself. You
Thank you for
shared your
having me.
story of intuition and how that's helped you sort of open up your world. It's been wonderful. So probably more of that kind of thing to come too. So by all
I was
means,
going to
check out
say,
that.
no, but I was going to say, are you do you think you've got the bug now? Because interviewing people is pretty awesome. And it
It
also,
is
it's like,
really cool.
it opens doors too, doesn't it? It's just
Yeah.
one of these things.
Yeah. So I can definitely see me doing a similar thing down the track. I don't see it being, at this stage at least, I don't see it being a regular thing. And I like the batch sort of way of doing things. That's just my style. That's how I work. And I've got more things happening
Ideas?
in my business coming up, and everything's always evolving. And that's what I love about our kind of work, is that we can sort of
Yeah.
evolve with what suits us and as we learn and as we understand more about our clients. So even though we come from
Wonderful.
different directions, I think, and clearly different sides of the planet,
As well.
we have a very similar style of helping people, I think. So
Yeah, I can
yeah.
see that. And for me, it's very important that there's no cookie cutter here, even with intuition,
Mm-hmm.
because I
Yeah.
was caught in that trap myself because I'm
Mm-hmm.
not clairvoyant or clairaudient, and most people who teach that are.
Mm-hmm.
I was, I felt like a fraud, and I felt like I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't good enough, and that I wasn't trying hard enough. Until I thought, actually, the world needs someone like me that can speak to
Mm-hmm.
people who are not in the psychic zone and who
Yes.
still want to benefit from something that we all are given at birth, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what would you say to some? This is my last question. What would you
Sure.
say to someone who's afraid to use their intuition in business?
Specifically in business, well, I would
Yeah.
say regardless of where it is, but yes, in business, you're probably already using it. It's just whether or not you're using it to your best interests. Um, Maybe you're noticing it and ignoring it, and that's still using it. It's not going to benefit you really. I think you can't really lose anything by following your intuition, or at least being aware of it and making a choice based on it. Um, I have been warned, and I think you might have said something similar to me or on my podcast too, that, you know, um, trusting your instinct and trusting your gut feels different than listening to fear. Um, and sometimes for beginners, it's hard to tell the difference. But if you can get your head around that, it's amazing. There's nothing to lose. If you're not coming
Absolutely.
from a place of fear, then you're only going to benefit from it. So,
Mm.
and it
Thank
just
you.
feels really good.
It does, even when it's
All
negative,
it is.
it
Yeah,
still
that's
feels
all it is. It
good.
just feels good.
Yeah.
Yeah, feels right, and it sits well with you.
Great, great tip. Thank you so much for coming and speaking to my audience. Yeah, do you have a freebie that you can, oh, they will find it on your page
Mm.
anyway when it
There's
happens.
always something happening on my page, but by all means, if you're watching this and you'd like to know more about me or anything, do send me a message, and I'm sure we can set up a bit of a one-on-one chat and see how you're
Oh
going.
yes, because that's important to know because some people don't like to have free chats with people, and I
Mm.
know I've changed my
I
mind about
think,
that,
yeah.
and I maybe you have as well. I don't know if it was something.
Well, I think that it's important, again, when we do such personal one-on-one work, it's important to feel comfortable with your coach or mentor or whatever you want to call it. And it's just as important for us as coaches or mentors or whatever to be comfortable with our clients. If we're not a good fit, we're not going to get good results. And I would much prefer to spend half an hour or 45 minutes or something having a chat with you, and then find out that maybe I'm better off sending you to somebody else first or
Yeah,
instead, and make sure that you're getting what you need out of whatever you're looking for,
absolutely.
rather than me saying, now you need to pay me this much now and then I'll talk to you and then you have to pay me. Like, it's
Mm.
you're not
And
going to get good results that
I
way.
want to add something to this
Mm,
because I think one of your superpowers is to remove the shame from
mm,
people who come to you about where they're at, and you certainly helped me with that. And so that's one of your. It's not on the only one. Obviously, you have some brilliant ideas. You do a lot of creative thinking, and you probably use your intuition a lot to find solutions for people that
mm,
maybe are novel, that have never been even done before,
yeah.
and that's important. That you have that approach of listening, really paying attention,
Mm,
and really being there holding the space so that your client
mm,
gets exactly what they need.
yeah.
Believe me, that it's not that common. So
Thank you. That does mean a lot coming from you. I find that most of the hard work when it comes to decluttering and organizing it's internal, it's in your mind, it's in your habits. Um,
absolutely.
it's not as hard as it sounds if you do it right and you come into it with the right support. It's
Yeah.
not as difficult, and it can actually be a really well, it should always be a really pleasant experience. Like, you want to come out of it feeling calmer and peaceful. That's the whole goal for me, is to bring, I like to say, we curate calm. We make decisions so that what you're left with is calm. And there's no room for shame in that. It's
Mm.
just
But there
more
is.
peace.
I'm pretty sure
Mm,
if you run a quiz or if you did some sort of poll
mm,
amongst people who
mm,
hire, organizing coach,
mm,
they feel a lot of shame.
mm.
I'm pretty sure of that.
Oh,
And but that
almost every
stops you
person.
from, yeah, that stops you from
Yeah,
actually doing the thing. It's the thing
it does.
that is the
Mm,
biggest obstacle to wanting, because you're
yeah.
constantly pulled back. It's like that resistance within you.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, making the decision to reach out and ask for help, or even just to ask for a little bit of advice, is a huge step. And, I don't think anyone has come to me and said, actually, my place is fine, but I just wanted you to have a look over it anyway. Like, nobody comes to me like that. People come to me and say, I really hope you're not scared off. Well, that hasn't happened yet. I've been in homes where I can't get through the front door and I have not been scared off.
Mm.
Right? You're not going to scare me off. It's just,
It's important to know. Mm.
yeah. I think if you feel that way, you know that you need help. If you
Yeah.
think that somebody's going to be scared off by the side of your home or the way you live, it means that you're not comfortable in it.
Mm.
My
At
job is
this.
not to make your home in such a way that I want to live there. It's not my home. I
Mm.
don't I It's your home. I want you to be comfortable in it. And if that means that you have 100, I don't know, avocado scoops, which I don't even understand why anyone would need one, but if you have 100 of them and that's what makes you feel comfortable, then that's fine. You can have as much of anything as you want, but I want you to make a decision about each one of them.
So, and this brings me to an anecdote that I want to share about how
Oh,
when we worked
please.
together,
Yeah.
because I am the mother of a beautiful autistic daughter who rescues teddies from the recycling center because she believes the Toy Story that she's
Mm-hmm.
watched many, many times, and for her, it's literal. And
Mm-hmm.
these teddies, she's rescuing teddies because they can't be left at the recycling center. It's just not possible. And so she has probably by now 400 teddies.
Yeah.
And I came to you with this huge amount of shame, wondering why I
Mm.
couldn't sort out my daughter. Um, I did try a little bit tactics. I don't shame her anymore. I'm afraid I have a little bit kind of not been very nice with her about it. Um, but we can repair that. And but what you did that was absolutely magical is that you made me aware of the difference between a collection and a pile of
Mm-hmm.
clutter.
Mm-hmm.
And she actually organizes them very carefully. She actually gives
Mm-hmm.
them a name each, sometimes even a middle name. She organizes tea parties, birthday parties. If I let her, she would have a birthday party for each of her teddy bears, in addition to her. I've drawn the line because I
Mm-hmm.
need to keep my sanity. But I think
Yeah.
I want to give this example to see how you can completely shift from shame to
Mm.
actually now I admire. I had a fondness for her for what she was doing, but
Mm.
because it was so far off the norm,
Yeah.
and I will accept it.
Yeah.
I'm still struggling with the norm. I'm still struggling with my inner
Yeah.
critic, my the judgment in my mind of what
Mm-hmm.
society has told me what is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And she was sadly on the receiving end of that judgment, and I feel awful. But you've helped me to remove that like almost instantly. And I don't think I could ever find the words to tell you how grateful I am for that.
Thank you, Ange. That is so wonderful to hear. And I feel so so much love for your daughter and her little collection. I say little, her, her
But
rather
you've helped
substantial
me
collection.
to see that
Yeah.
as well. I had lost it
Yeah.
because when it
Well,
went past
because,
a certain point and I
yeah,
thought it was unmanageable and all sorts of
yeah,
things, I lost it, and you helped me to see my daughter with the eyes of love again. That isn't that incredible?
that's so beautiful. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Yeah. I mean, that's like we were saying. So basically, the issue, the thing that needed to be decluttered there wasn't necessarily the toys. It was the concept of what a little girl's room should look like,
Yep,
or what is an acceptable amount of toys to have.
yep,
You know, what is acceptable and what is right and what is going to work is going to be different for every single house and every single room in that house and every single person in every room in that house. And yeah,
who
and
says?
wasn't that
Yeah,
an easier way to declutter than to
and
throw
to
out all
fight
her
her,
toys?
to
Yeah,
fight her and hurt her
yeah,
and hurt
yeah.
her, I have to say. I didn't, but I could have.
Because it's
And some
infuriating,
parents
because we
do.
have an idea as mum, as the person who has worked so hard to get this house to work for everybody in it. It feels like they're fighting you, and it feels
Yeah,
like they're being selfish for you know for their room to be opposed to how you have
yeah.
envisaged life in this home. And it's not because you want bad things at all. It's because you're trying to maintain
I have
harmony.
different needs than
You
she
have
does.
different needs and you're trying to balance everybody's needs,
Yeah.
and you're seeing her behavior as opposed to everybody else's needs, rather than her behavior is satisfying her need. And it
Mm.
wasn't really affecting everybody else's, as long as she can keep it in her control. And for the time being, that is in her control. And I think, now it might be some time before we can see this for sure, but I think if she has some more freedom with how she takes care of these toys, she will be more selective in how she chooses to let that collection evolve, grow, shrink, however it might happen.
Mm.
But if you fought her on it, it's only going to get bigger
Mm.
and more out
Absolutely.
of control for both of you.
No, no, I agree.
So I'm
I
so
agree.
glad that you were able to find that
Yeah, and
release
also
for
you said,
yourself.
I want to finish on that note as well. I think you
Sure.
said that you trusted that when the time was right, she would make a beautiful project out of this. And that kind of lit me up completely. So this is your magic, Lauren. I need to say it. I need to say it for all our listeners. And thank you so much for coming to talk to us today. Thank
Thank
you.
you for having me, Ange.
Well, that was phenomenal.
I think you're
Thank
still
you.
recording.
Oh, yes, I am.